One of them broke the Anita Hill story. Politicians fear them. Nobody wants to mess with them. Join Sam Donaldson and me for Prime Time.
You're watching Channel 5.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We begin tonight with the fate of a single individual. The basketball star Magic Johnson confirmed a short while ago that he has the AIDS virus and he will retire from the Los Angeles Lakers. His doctor said he isn't showing any symptoms at the moment, but he is not up to playing a professional basketball season. The news is like a thunderclap for millions of Americans, for he's one of the country's truly great athletes who is admired by adults and idolized by children from every walk of life. He becomes a statistic. For as many as 1.5 million other Americans have the AIDS virus, more than 250,000 of them children. And for all the effort, there is still no cure. In Los Angeles tonight, Magic Johnson held a news conference, and ABC's Brian Rooney is there.
Magic Johnson handled the announcement with the cool and control that he always showed when he played the game of basketball.
Because of the HIV virus that I have attained, I will have to retire from the Lakers today. I just want to make clear, first of all, that I do not have the AIDS disease, but I'm going to deal with it, and my life will go on.
Only 2 weeks ago, Johnson was playing exhibition games in Paris and telling everyone what a good time he was having. Then, back home, Johnson missed the first 3 games of the regular season with what was described as a flu virus. 2 days ago, he told a reporter he was feeling weak. He said the legs and the wind are the first to go. In 12 seasons with the Los Angeles Lakers, Magic Johnson was the heart of the team, leading them to the NBA championship 5 times.
I appreciate that.
He was also one of the most revered figures in all of professional sports.
I'm gonna be styling now, huh?
And that's what I'm all about. Same thing my dad is all about. Going out, busting my butt every day, just trying to be the best that I can be.
They called him Magic because he could do just about anything with a basketball.
A great pass. The Magic Man with your favorite pass.
Johnson has a reputation for being as good a man off the court as he is on it. His annual exhibition game has raised $6.5 million for the United Negro College Fund. Johnson was scheduled to play for the United States in the 1992 Olympics, the first games to accept professional basketball players. He was married only 2 months ago to his longtime girlfriend, Cookie Kelly. Johnson was quick to say that his wife does not have the AIDS virus and that he does not know how he was exposed. He said he will go on to be a spokesman in the fight against AIDS.
I am going to go on, I'm going to beat it, and I'm going to have fun. Okay, so thank you again, and I'll see you soon.
Brian Rooney, ABC News, Los Angeles.
There is so much that will be said about this sad news for an American idol who is such an example for millions of people, especially, as we said, young people.
A lot of young kids, regardless of color, believe in it. It could happen to anybody, no matter how much money you make, no matter where you're from.
I mean, he's one of them people that you'd say it wouldn't happen to him, just like it wouldn't happen to me.
Makes you think that this stuff really is out there. Makes you want to be careful in what you do.
And maybe now, because he's retired from this, people will pay a lot more attention to the AIDS problem.
I'm just shocked he has AIDS. I never knew a wonderful player like him would have AIDS. He's still one of the best.
Maybe some good will come out of this, you know. He was a role model for kids for a long time.
I can't believe it. Magic's a completely inspirational figure to everybody from all walks of life, I think.
AIDS doesn't have a face. It's something that is here. It's something that we have to deal with.
Several years ago, when the actor Rod Hudson announced that he had AIDS, the effect was greater understanding of a disease which still frightens so many people. For Magic Johnson, there will now be the added burden of expectation. As horrible as this is for him, said one AIDS professional, it is good news for AIDS education. The number of teenage cases is still quite small, but among the young, the number is doubling every month, and no group is more sexually active. Magic Johnson and his commercial sponsors now have a chance to influence millions of adolescents, to tell them, as he said he would tonight, that this is a preventable disease, they can practice safe sex, but it can happen to them. as he said it happened to him. In a moment, the other news. The Democrats unveil a tax plan, breaks for the middle class paid for by the better off. The NATO alliance considers how to reorganize in a rapidly changing Europe. And on the American agenda tonight, homeless veterans and the housing they think should be theirs.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Brought to you by Toyota.
Celebrate the 21st century a little early. Introducing the all-new 1992 Toyota Camry. We just couldn't leave well enough alone.
On the state of the economy tonight, less than 48 hours after voters sounded a loud alarm, the Democrats have moved to set the agenda for a debate over taxes that could dominate the presidential campaign, which, as we all know, has already begun. The chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Dan Rostenkowski, has proposed a tax cut today aimed squarely at the middle class. And when it comes to taxes, there is no more powerful figure on Capitol Hill than Democratic Congressman Rostenkowski. Here's ABC's Cokie Roberts.
The plan has just the ingredients the Democrats relish.
If you're a middle-income American, you get a tax cut. If you're in the top 1%, you get a tax increase.
And the proposal has the virtue of simplicity.
No bells, no whistles, no untested economic theories or gambles. What you see is what you get.
What you get is up to $200 in tax credits if you're a single taxpayer and up to $400 for a couple. That would affect 90 million taxpayers and would be paid for by raising the rates for 1 million. The tax rate would climb to 35% for single people making more than $85,000 and for couples making more than $145,000. And it would also add a 10% surtax for the 30,000 Americans whose taxable income is more than $1 million. Republicans warn that today's tax cut could be tomorrow's tax increase.
Ultimately, the middle class is going to pay. And you may start out by saying we're raising it on the rich, but in the end, it's going to creep down and it's going to hit the middle class. It's a tax rate increase.
For years, Republicans have convinced voters that when Democrats say taxes, they mean tax hikes. Republicans will try to do that again. Democrats hope the middle class believes they're fighting a president trying to give tax breaks to the rich. With each party blaming the other for high taxes, it will be difficult to pass any tax plan anytime soon. Cokie Roberts, ABC News, Capitol Hill.
Still in Washington, the Democrats in the Senate have introduced another bill to extend unemployment benefits for those who've been out of work for 6 months. President Bush has already vetoed one such bill. This time, the Democrats are offering some new ways to pay for it, including taking money out of foreign aid. The House has passed a civil rights bill. It will now be easier for employees to sue for job discrimination and sexual harassment and collect damages. President Bush, who had resisted the legislation for 2 years, is expected to sign this bill. Groups that support abortion rights have challenged the Supreme Court to rule once and for all on the question of legalized abortion. Planned Parenthood and the ACLU want the court to use Pennsylvania's strict new abortion law as the ultimate test of abortion rights, and they want the court to do so by next summer before the full-blown fall political campaign. Here's our law correspondent, Tim O'Brien.
The leaders of the abortion rights movement were united in telling the Supreme Court the time has come for a showdown on abortion.
We have presented one question and only one question to the 9 justices. Has the Supreme Court overruled Roe v. Wade?
Ever since the High Court had all but invited states to restrict abortion in the celebrated Webster case 2 years ago, abortion rights have been imperiled. Pennsylvania imposed a 24-hour waiting period and required juveniles to get parental consent. A federal appeals court upheld those restrictions October 21st. Planned Parenthood had 90 days to appeal to the Supreme Court. It took only 2 weeks.
If Roe is no longer the law of the land, what is? Women can no longer remain in limbo.
The quick appeal means the abortion question could be decided by early summer in the heat of the 1992 elections.
For elected officials, this means that the days of dancing and dodging, of hemming and hawing on the right to choose are absolutely over.
Abortion rights advocates know the Supreme Court has not been sympathetic to their cause, but if they lose and Roe versus Wade is to be overruled, the strategy is to let it happen quickly in hopes of exacting a price next November at the ballot box. Tim O'Brien, ABC News at the Supreme Court.
On Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrials gained 15.5 points to close at 3054, and the trading was heavy. The actress Jean Tierney has died of emphysema. She starred in several movies in the 1940s and 50s, including The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. She also starred as the mysterious victim in the movie Laura. She was 70. We'll be back in just a moment.
Nighttime, one of the worst times for pain. Pain that's hard to face alone. That's why you need new Ultra Strength Bengay, with more pain relievers than we've ever had before. For muscle pain that's hard to ignore, minor arthritis pain, back pain, pain that seems worse at night. New Ultra Strength Bengay, with more pain relievers than ever. Deep, penetrating warmth for fast, long-lasting relief. You can say goodnight to your pain with new Ultra Strength Bengay.
You know, if you drink a lot of fruit juice...
And apparently you do.
That's my point. Sunsweet prune juice makes a really delicious change of pace from these other juices.
You mean there are people who still haven't tried Sunsweet prune juice?
Hard to believe with my charisma.
Last week, my girlfriend broke up with me. Then she traded in her Toyota Corolla for this Eagle Summit.
Well, did she give you a reason?
Said she needed her space.
So you got a $500 rebate?
Yep, I got it when I bought my new Eagle Summit.
Great. What do you plan to do with it?
Just drive it when I want to go somewhere.
If your doctor has recommended Metamucil and you like the results, but you don't like those glasses of thick liquid, change to FiberCon. Get the same fiber action in easy-to-swallow tablets. Get doctor-recommended FiberCon.
President Bush was overseas today meeting in Rome with the 15 other leaders of the North Atlantic Treaty Alliance. They all agreed on the obvious, that the reason NATO was established 42 years ago, to discourage a Soviet invasion of Western Europe, has disappeared. The question is now, how much longer will NATO be necessary, and should the U.S. have a military role in the future of Europe? ABC's Britt Hume is in Rome.
Facing uncertainty about how this NATO summit would go, Mr. Bush met first today with British Prime Minister Major, one leader whose support for the Atlantic Alliance and continued U.S. leadership in it he knew he could count on.
We think that'll all be smooth, don't you, Prime Minister? Absolutely. Really. We're all here to reinforce NATO.
But at today's closed-door summit opening, after the obligatory picture-taking, first to speak was French President Mitterrand, who said NATO is not a holy alliance, suggesting the French at least wouldn't mind seeing NATO give way to an all-European force. When his turn came next, Mr. Bush said, quote, "My friends, if your ultimate aim is to provide independently for your own defense, the time to tell us is today." U.S. officials said the president's blunt challenge was intended to force the other NATO leaders to either speak up or, by silence, acquiesce in a continued U.S. role in the alliance. Secretary of State Baker later said, in effect, it worked, that no one had said a discouraging word.
The United States will, for quite some time, continue to be the leader of the alliance, and that our European allies are very anxious that that be the case.
If that is the case, it means there will continue to be American troops in Europe, though in smaller numbers. It will also mean American nuclear forces to protect Europe, and this administration fully expects continued overall U.S. command of NATO forces. Britt Hume, ABC News, Rome.
NATO has been in the process of redefining itself ever since the collapse of communism in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. The NATO Secretary General Manfred Werner said today, "We have lost our former enemies." How true. ABC's Bob Zelnick on where NATO has been and where it may be headed.
The North Atlantic Treaty Organization that was created 4 decades ago might look very different if it were being shaped to meet today's conditions. First, the doctrine of forward defense, that is, defending the borders between Eastern and Western Europe, might well be discarded since there's no longer a Soviet threat to those borders. Second, for the same reason, there might be no need for the U.S. to keep nuclear weapons in Europe for possible use against a conventional Soviet attack. Third, with Western Europe moving briskly toward economic and political union, the U.S. might no longer be the dominant voice in NATO. Because the world is changing, the newly designed NATO would need to consider intervening outside of its traditional area, such as trying to end a civil war in Yugoslavia.
New threats are not in the NATO area, and NATO is not able to deal with them because of its historical roots. We need new organizations to deal with the new threats.
What worries U.S. officials is that these new organizations may decide to exclude Americans. For example, this combat brigade of French and German troops is designed to operate outside the NATO command which the U.S. dominates. France and Germany recently proposed expanding the brigade to an all-European army of 100,000 troops, able to operate both inside and outside Western Europe. Most senior U.S. officials fear that as an independent European force takes shape over time, it could undermine the willingness of Congress to keep paying for 150,000 American troops in Europe.
We don't want just a token presence. We're not interested just in a symbolic presence of the United States in Europe. We're interested in meaningful military capability.
Americans need to stay committed in Europe. When we were not committed in Europe, we got dragged into wars over there anyway.
Despite efforts to refurbish the alliance, many defense experts predict the number of American troops in Europe will fall to 75,000 or even 50,000 in the years ahead. Having outlived the threat from the East, NATO, as it's been known, may now be afflicted with a case of terminal success. Bob Zelnick, ABC News at the Pentagon.
Overseas in the Soviet Union itself today, it is Revolution Day, the 74th anniversary of the Russian Revolution. There were some fairly small demonstrations in Moscow, both for and against communism, but most people simply ignored the anniversary, and for the first time since World War II, there was no formal parade. On the Philippine island of Leyte, they're burying the bodies as quickly as they can today to prevent an outbreak of disease. 3,400 have died in this week's floods and landslides, and many more are still missing. In our next segment, how the firefighters won their war against the burning oil wells in Kuwait.
These are remarkable cars, and I've left all this space to show you why. First, Dodge Spirit and Plymouth Acclaim are the lowest priced 6-passenger cars in the world, even with an airbag and all the goodies you see here. But okay, you want to spruce it up, so you start adding options: air, automatic, 4-speaker stereo. When you're through, you'll find that Spirit and Acclaim, with all this, are still the lowest priced 6-passenger cars on the planet.
Now, drive for the gold with up to $1,000 cash back on select cars.
Kids love my ice cream. Had to take their word for it. Meet the ice cream man who couldn't eat ice cream. So you want 2 scoops or 1 scoop? Funny, huh? Same trouble digesting milk, cheese. Made my stomach nuts. Anyway, that was before dairies. I just chew some tablets and eat what I want. That's opened up a whole new world for me. How's it taste? Good.
That cough sounds bad.
When her little patient is coughing, it's the biggest thing on Mom's mind. That's why there's Robitussin Pediatric. Great tasting cough and cold relief. Formulated just for kids. From the brand more doctors and pharmacists recommend. Robitussin Pediatric gives long-lasting cough relief day or night, so both the patient and the doctor can rest comfortably. Robitussin Pediatric Cough, a new cough and cold formula. Recommended by Dr. Mom.
Campbell's heard your healthy request.
Low cholesterol.
Less salt.
But lots of taste.
Here's our answer. New Campbell's Healthy Request ready-to-serve soups. All the great taste you want without some things you don't. New Campbell's Healthy Request. And healthy.
I swim, I jog. I love junk food.
Sometimes even I get constipation.
When it happens to you, Ex-Lax pills give you a choice. Extra gentle for a little help, regular for a little more. Ex-Lax, for regular people who sometimes aren't.
The Pentagon said today that the war in the Gulf will, after all, cost American taxpayers money. The predictions had been that contributions by America's allies would cover it all. Not so. The Pentagon now says the war cost $61 billion, nearly $3 billion more than the allies have committed. Well, now that the oil well fires in Kuwait are out, the environmental scientists were predicting today that the after effects of pollution from the fires could still linger for decades. As we reported last night, the last of the burning oil wells was capped yesterday, just 9 months after the end of the Gulf War, thanks in large measure to international competition. ABC's Ned Potter on how it was done.
How do you cool off hell? The Kuwaiti government counted 732 burning oil wells, and some firefighters said putting them out could take a couple of years.
We're talking about hitting the beach like the Marines hit the beach in fighting a war.
In the end, it was a war, though very different from Desert Storm, and it did take an army, though smaller than General Schwarzkopf's. By the time a Canadian team put out the last well yesterday, 10,000 firefighters had been brought in from 34 countries. It was often a low-tech battle, but one breakthrough was this contraption from Hungary, essentially 2 jet engines mounted on a captured Iraqi tank. It was built on the spot in August. Using air and water, it could literally blow fires out, 6 or 7 a day, much faster than the teams that had to spend several days at each well. With its help, mission accomplished in 8 months.
It's been hard work. It's been very black, you know, a lot of the time. And now the fires are out, the sun's coming out. Now everybody's complaining about how warm it is with the sunshine.
So the worst is over, but Kuwait's oil production is 1/5 of normal, and parts of the desert will be an oily mess for years. Ned Potter, ABC News, New York.
In a moment, the American Agenda.
How about dessert from Presto Salad Shooter?
Shoot some slices, salad shooter.
Point and shoot right into dessert or fruit salad.
Shoot some shreds, salad shooter.
For chocolatey, nutty dessert toppings.
Shoot it fast, shoot it neat, shoot it pretty, pretty salad shooter.
Presto Salad Shooter Slicer Shredder. Clean up easy, dishwasher safe, small enough to store anywhere. Great salads and much, much more.
Salad shooter.
Original, cordless, rechargeable, and now professional salad shooter.
Oh, no. Ellen, I'm knocked out.
Fetch Mommy. Fetch Mommy.
What are you doing out there?
When it's cold and rough outside, try something warm and creamy inside. Instant cream of wheat in our new honey nut flavor or original cream of wheat.
Tomorrow, you get the paper.
2 warm ways to come in from the cold.
It's gone. But it isn't.
Vicks introduces an incredible new cough drop.
It's gone, but it isn't.
A cough drop so powerful, it keeps on working even after the drop is gone. It's extra strength Vicks, a new kind of Vicks with twice the Vicks vapor medicine to relieve your cough and help your scratchy throat and stuffy nose feel better, even after the drop is gone. New extra strength Vicks, extra strong to work.
Even after it's gone.
Tonight, she got custody of the kids. He kidnapped them, hiding them in war-torn Yugoslavia. We go with her as she tries to get them back. Plus, 3 powerhouse women of Washington. Nobody wants to mess with them. Prime time tonight.
Finally here this evening, a few days before Veterans Day, we've put a subject on the American agenda which brings together the concept of serving the country and seeming to be so ill-served by it. We're speaking of those Americans who've served in the military, particularly in Vietnam, and who are now without a home. It is widely believed they may account for 1/3 of the population of homeless men, at least 175,000 of them. Our agenda correspondent, Beth Nissen, tonight on who they are and why they are homeless.
I served in Danang, infantry, Korea, artillery.
Air Force, twice in Nam.
I was in the Marine Corps, 63 through 69. Since then, I have just been on the street off and on.
Veterans of the nation's wars are now veterans of the streets.
I got a Purple Heart. What good is that?
They are living on the streets because they cannot afford to live anywhere else.
When I came back, I couldn't get a job.
Living on the streets because VA treatment programs are too crowded to keep them.
All they can do is just counsel you, and that's it.
Living on the streets where they still combat alcohol, drugs, delusions.
I'm a creator. In other words, I created the solar system that's up over my head.
Most cannot find or hold a job. Almost all are bitter.
I served in Vietnam. For what? For me sleeping in the street now? In a sleeping bag, just like I did when I was in Vietnam?
Homeless veterans need a full range of services. What their advocates say they need first is shelter. And there is shelter out there, standing empty. Thousands of vacant buildings and foreclosed homes that government agencies already own.
It's a very cost-efficient, very sensible way to use federal resources that are now lying vacant.
And it's the law. Surplus government properties like this former VA clinic in Los Angeles are required to be turned over to the homeless by the McKinney Act, passed in 1987. But government compliance has been poor. After 3 years of trying, a local coalition for the homeless is still shut out.
You've got to deal with that red tape. It's just that the government is slow to move. It's real slow to move.
Only a few hundred yards away, a homeless veteran lives in a house of blankets.
They appear to be callous, they appear to be indifferent, and they appear to be unsympathetic.
Officials say the long process is necessary to make sure the buildings end up like this former VA clinic in downtown Boston.
This place is for veterans, and this is where you live, and this is your home.
It shows what can be done. In only 18 months, a group of veterans has set up everything from an eye clinic to counseling services.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
150 veterans call it home.
All we needed was the chance. Take homeless veterans, put them in a place, and look what happens.
Not all the vacant buildings the government owns can be given away. The VA itself holds 5,000 foreclosed homes across the country. But by law, the VA must sell them.
We have agreed to discount them at 50% of whatever the value is. That's a pretty good discount.
Not good enough for most nonprofit organizations. Only 9 of the 5,000 homes have been bought for the homeless. In Pittsburgh, the local American Legion used up its housing fund to buy these 4 townhouses from the VA for $20,000. They now house 10 formerly homeless vets.
There's a waiting list to get in here like you wouldn't believe.
Homeless advocates and many VA officials would like to see the law changed so that vacant houses could be leased or rented. But so far, the VA has not pressured Congress, has not even asked Congress for that change. Empty houses kept empty by the law, vacant buildings kept vacant by red tape. It makes no sense to Ronald Donaldson, ex-Marine, Vietnam vet, living on a New York City sidewalk.
The way I live now is like I lived back in the jungle. 15 years later, look at me. This is where I live at. Send me a postcard.
Beth Nissen, ABC News, New York.
That's our report on World News Tonight. I'm Peter Jennings. Good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
Marge is no ordinary psychic.
A psychic predicts a murder.
Murder?
Murder.
I'm not going to let some psychic dictate our lives.
I think we just lost our client. Pros and cons, Thursday.
Wow. I remember lugging around those relics. What a waste. Especially when one little box can do the job of both. I'm talking about New Ultra Bold. It's the only concentrated detergent and concentrated softener in one. That's why this tiny box can get my clothes looking clean and feeling soft all in one simple step. Sure, I used to mess with a separate detergent and softener, but then I wised up.
New Ultra Bold. Clean, soft, and simple.
You asked for it. Backed by popular demand at Terry Krantz Crossroads and Ford Dodge. Push it, pull, and drag it celebration. Push, pull, drag it into Terry Krantz Crossroads and get $2,000 guaranteed minimum trade-in on selected new 92s and quality used cars, trucks, and vans. Our biggest inventory ever. Ford, Chevrolets, Toyotas, Pontiacs, Olds, Cadillacs, and more. We don't care if you push it, pull it, drag it in. It's worth $2,000 whatever you're driving. Well, just about. The offer is limited. Hurry for your best selection.